What's up, guys? Welcome back to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Palantir Technologies, ticker symbol PLTR, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Tuesday, February 27th. So, Palantir stock here today, up 59 cents a share, 2.57%. Let's take a look here. First of all, if you guys appreciate me covering Palantir every single day, I cover this thing in anticipation of every trading day, so 5 videos a week. Please subscribe to the channel to get notified of each Palantir update, and I'll keep them coming. Now, as far as after hours here, it is down 6 cents a share, whatever. It's essentially flat. Listen, as always, take after hours, grain of salt. Volume is incredibly low, easy to push around. Now, Palantir intraday here on the 1 minute, just briefly, let's take a look at intraday opportunity for potentially scalping, getting some scalping revenue going around a core position. If we take a look, really, I think the only time that was appropriate for scalping today at all on Palantir would have been this first, third of the day here, maybe first quarter of today. And then things kind of opened up in this channel, and we kind of just were channel driven the remainder of the day. Was this area here was really the only thing I would have seen appropriate for scalping on Palantir. However, unfortunately, the channel between, if you look here, what I call the volume weighted average price resistance, it's really just the 2 standard deviation band. And that channel between that and the 20 EMA, which is the channel I like to look at, I like to make sure that thing's at least 25 cents wide if I'm taking a little bit of a tighter scalp with like a 20 cent stop, 30 cent take profit kind of deal. I'm not really going to be comfortable entering if it's not at least 25 cents wide. There's too much of a psychological hang up there to get to profit target. And here the channel was just a little too tight. I mean, it was 10 cents wide. So while it was a relatively clean repeat offender setup, not perfect, not textbook, not the kind that I would teach a class with, but it was relatively clean. Channel, too tight, kind of broke that setup. But just be aware, that is what I'm always looking for every day on a stock like Palantir. Tight bid-ask spread, right? And I'm going to be watching Palantir for this tomorrow. Tight bid-ask spread, and then clean, ideally repeat offender setups if the stock itself isn't in play. But if Palantir gets a fresh news catalyst, if there's elevated relative volume, it pops up on one of my momentum scanners, I'll scalp it just like any other momentum stock. I'm not afraid to scalp stocks if they're in play. I mean, that's where we have the majority of edge, right? But on any old day, 99% of the time on any stock, it's not going to be in play. So I'm stuck looking at, 1 or 2 setups out of my playbook that I know has edge. For example, a repeat offender, channel just a little tight. All right, moving on to the 5 minute. Let's get away now from the intraday mentality and take a look at what we're typically looking at here and go through our rounds of factors to pull out to try to get some bias out of today's market. So, being that we had some regular trading hour upside movement, what are we looking for, right? Well, we're looking for volume that exceeds the pullback and flat volume by a lot within the contextual reasoning of it being open, right, on this upside move. Let me explain what I mean. So we see, we expect big volume on the open. We actually held pretty big volume for, contextually speaking, these 3 volume candles are, I would say, a little bit more than you could typically expect on just any old open, like a flat open. I would expect these volume candles to be below 2 million at least, especially that first one. But we pushed. The volume was pretty heavy off of the open, which I would say is a reasonably good thing and not too much of a force here to point out, okay? Aside from that, yeah, we expect elevated volume into the close, but it was so mixed that would be a force to try to pull anything out of that. But you know what, bulls? I mean, listen, I'll take some elevated volume candles on this upside push and then a fade in volume on any pullbacks during the day, flat periods, pullbacks. I'll take it. Is it the most obvious 5 minute volume profile we've ever seen? Not even close, right? But I wouldn't say it's too out there to point that out, that we did see some good volume on that upside move. Let's move on now to the 30 minute and start getting really contextual with day-to-day levels, self-fulfilling prophecy levels like the 50 period moving average and the 200 period moving average. These are levels I'm going to be paying very close attention to tomorrow, starting with the 30 minute here. Now, bulls, 2 things on your mind if you're a bull here tomorrow, on the 30 minute in particular. Any downside test of that 50 period, gonna want to see that hold really well. Now, currently we find ourselves about 1%, 0.95% away from there. And as far as that 200 period, which we got rejected off of today, we're about 1% away from that. listen, both are well within range for a single day on Palantir. I mean, today was 2.57%. That is no big deal. 1% in either direction for Palantir. So ideally, if you're a bull, you'd want to see an upside move and a reclaim of the 200 period moving average. Any downside test at all, while that's not your first choice, going to want to see that hold. Bears, any upside test, you're going to want to see a rejection, just like what we got here today. Hard rejections off that 200 period, and any downside test at all, you're going to want to see a hard breakdown through. Set us up for a test of 23, which has been a psychological area of support. Now, 4-hour chart, you can see that 50 period is very much so in play, creating a tight channel in between 23 and the 50 period. The 50 period is currently just above 24 bucks a share, and we are right about halfway on this 4-hour chart. Bulls, listen, I mean, it wouldn't be your first choice to see a downside test of 23, but if we did, obviously you'd like to see a repeat of this big bounce that we've had recently in the last few trading days. Upside test is ideal. Crack 24, crack the 50 period on the 4-hour, reclaim it, back test it, fine. Like pop through, back test, that's great, as long as it claims as support and bounces up and we head up toward our next level, which would be 25. All right, bears, any test of the 50 period, going to want to see that reject, but really what bears have their eye on, downside break of 23, which brings us here to the daily chart, which is going to paint by far the most obvious picture. Moving averages go out the window here because the nearest one's at 1890, not immediately relevant, but this shows us even more clearly. 23 is a clear area to watch. Bulls want to see that hold of support. Bears want to see a downside break of that. And to the upside here, you can see 24 is a very obvious level, at least in the short term. And these videos are primarily geared toward like day-to-day perspective because I'm covering these stocks every day. So this one's becoming really simple on Palantir. Bears, you want a downside break at 23. Bulls, you want an upside crack of 24. Claim 24 as support because we've been getting rejected off that for the last 5 trading days. And head up toward 25. Ideally getting up toward, past that recent high at 25.53. All right, let's take a look at what the options traders had to say in terms of bias here today on Palantir. You can see this is not out of the ordinary for Palantir. It is extraordinarily heavy to the call side. 266,000 total contracts traded. 182K of those were calls and 83,000 puts. Just a ridiculously heavy call side bias on the overall call put ratio here. Now, Delta, short-term speculators, right? The out-of-the-money cheapies, gambly style, those short-term bets. 59,300 calls in that Delta range and about 37,000 puts. So, not only are we seeing an overall heavy call put ratio, but we're also seeing a short-term speculator call side bias here, okay? Now, we go down the chain, every single Delta range. This has been common on Palantir. Every Delta range, out of the money, at the money, in the money. Short-term, mid-term, longer-term sentiment, all of them leaning to the call side. As always, the options traders, they can be wrong. So make sure your risk is managed. Number one priority here on, the main Roensch Capital channel, here on Roensch Capital Charts, always stay in the game. Risk management is king. If you got value out of that video, please subscribe to the channel. I'm covering Palantir every single day, and I'll see you in the next one.